Hey Wargamers, Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff. And the recent release of the Blighted Wilds campaign book for Age of Sigmar has gotten me more excited about the game than I have been in many months. I did a video talking specifically about why I think it's cool, why there's so much value in it that I just had to make a video announcing that. I have that in the link down in the description below. In that video, I mentioned that I made my own terrain, which is a thing that you can do in the Blighted Wilds book. It comes with a short story about a Nurgle invasion, just kind of a glimpse into what one part of this overall campaign is like. Then there's a whole bunch of Path to Glory and campaign rules, 12 unique missions. There's a regiment builder, like in hyper detail, and then a terrain designer. A whole regiment sounded like a whole lot of work to do last minute, but I can do terrain. It seemed far more doable, and quite frankly, I have never liked or bought the Stormcast Porta Potty. So I actually have a space in my collection that could be filled. So what I'm going to do in this video is walk you through how I made this piece of terrain, physically, in terms of how I actually built the thing, in case you want to build something very similar or something very simple as well. And then I'm going to talk about how I built it rules-wise. How does it come into the game as a way that me and my opponent can interact with? Sadly, GW doesn't send me physical books anymore. I only have the PDF that I work out of, and they don't want me to screen share. So I'll get the book, and for the next projects, I'll be showing it physically. For these, you just kind of have to trust the process, and it's more of a visual and audio showing off thing than it is anything else. I do want to say, though, that this book is a lot of fun. I had a great time reviewing it, a great time building things for it. It got me stoked. And it really harkened me back to, as I mentioned in the other video, Path to Glory and Warhammer Fantasy Battle skirmish kind of days. Classic wargaming, where you just did whatever sounded cool. But you're working within confines and rules and stuff like that. But it's just a lot of excuses for hobby ridiculousness and being unhinged and having fun. Some of the most fun when it comes to terrain is kit bashing. And before I jump into the full details of the video, I want to say, if you want to source some really cheap parts, I have a link in my description below that goes straight to Noble Knight Games here in the US, have a used minis section. They have just about everything. You can get some parts for dirt cheap. Like here I have the Skaven braziers from the Spearhead terrain set. This little bridge acting as the back headboard of my courtroom is one of the platforms from Warcry. Used minis are a great way to save money, so I have a link for that because specifically with terrain, it's a very easy way to just inject a little bit of real GW into your homemade creations. This entire project was made from foam and my bits bin. My initial idea was to have some kind of king and court setting for my Knights Excelsior, but unfortunately I didn't have time to wait on a 160mm base to come in the mail. That's the biggest size of terrain that you can make, which we'll cover more in the rules part of it. And so I scaled down this idea I had for a courtroom to just, you call it the judge's bench. This is a Ghyran themed book, and nothing in the fantasy setting makes me happier than like old moss covered stone buildings, right? Because it always just kind of elicits these feelings of like, what happened here? Who built it? Where did they go? Those kinds of things. So for that, I opted for a broken and forgotten tower base that my Knights Excelsior are using as a makeshift courtroom on the go while they're here in Ghyran. Thematically, the Knights Excelsior are all about justice and judgment and being black and white, and I thought this would be a fun way to bring a bit of that into the setting. That process began with stones. So I got out my pink foam and I started cutting successively smaller strips and cut those strips into little blocks. I crushed them all up to make them nice and rounded and basically weeded out some of the sharper edges by doing that. When it came to building, this was a rather arduous process. Unfortunately, I didn't record a ton of it because it's just literally 1 minute of apply glue, put 2 things of foam on, wait for it to dry. But like I said, I used an old Warcry bridge to act as my headboard of the courtroom, and then I began to ring the entire thing with my bricks, trying to keep them roughly level, but not perfectly so. I want to leave some gaps. I want to put some soil in there, some flowers popping out, just to make it seem like whatever mortar was binding this has long time eroded away. Once I got the basic form of sort of my semi-tower, if you will, I decided to plunder the bits bin. I found some old braziers that came from the first Spearhead set, the ones that I had cut up to make the Spearhead tournament for kids that I was organizing. Well, I drilled a hole in the bottom of each of them, shoved a toothpick in there, and stabbed them down into the foam. I added some texture paint to kind of break up the bottom a bit, fill in some of the cracks, consume some of the stone, that kind of thing. And lastly, and I cannot stress how important enough this is, I thinned down some Elmer's glue with water and coated every single inch of this thing. Any exposed foam needs to be covered, because if you didn't know this, spray primer paint has a chemical reaction with foam where it melts it. So without some kind of coating, something like that, you're gonna have a bad time. So one night before I went to bed, I just drenched the whole thing in Elmer's glue, let it sit. The next morning it was ready to go. After that, I primed it black, and painting was very simple. So fact that I didn't even really record it, because quite frankly, it's just grays and then some basic washes, and then painted up the braziers with warpstone glow. Last step was to add some flock and flowers. As I mentioned, the basic idea was to have a alternate to the porta potty, and something that I thought fit more with the themes of my Knights Excelsior, the place of justice, the court of judgment, that kind of thing. That said, while making this project, I already came up with like 4 better ideas in my head, so I might get to those later on. And I went this way because I figured, just like Games Workshop when they're designing units, they start with the model first and then they add rules to represent it. So that's what we're going to pivot to now. As I mentioned before, Games Workshop doesn't like me screen sharing the books that they send me. There's like watermarks all over it. Anyway, I'm just going to talk you through this, and then when I get the book physically, when it's released, I'll go through in a bit more detail and we can examine all the minutiae. For this purpose, I'm just going to show you what I built. Now, this section of the book is called Landmarks of Ghiran, and it can exist in addition to your faction terrain. It does have a points cost. It's just me who's using it as a replacement. And the process for building terrain is very simple. There's 7 steps, and it goes like this. Step 1, select a destiny point limit. This is the resource that you're going to use to build your landmark here. Step 2 is to fill out the starting war scroll. Then you pick your form. You pick your origin and flaw. Choose a curator. Choose any curator upgrades. Pick anything else to upgrade it with. And that's it. So let's go through this step by step together. First up are your destiny point limits. This determines a few things. First of all, your base size, the points cost for the terrain in question, and the destiny points that you have to spend on upgrades for it. Now, I'm not trying to make a fortress or anything like that, though of course you can, and there are 3 sizes to choose from small to large. The first one is Imposing Monument, 15 destiny points, and it costs 20 points in your list. Spectacular Edifice is 20 destiny points and costs 70 points. And Breathtaking Monolith is 30 destiny points and cost 120 for your arm. Each has base sizes that are specified. There's an oval version and a round version. Basically, it starts at 100 millimeter rounds and goes up to 160. I already had a 100 sitting here, so I wanted to kind of just jump in with that. So we know that we are building an imposing monument with 15 destiny points to spend. The next section here is to fill out the starting war scroll, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure why they have you do this now, because we are going to make a lot of changes to this, but if it helps you kind of work through it on paper, it's a good point to do so. When you start to do this, you're going to be given a pre-generated terrain stat line, right? No movement, I believe it's 8 health and a 5-up save, and it has keywords that are going to change to match your army and your Grand Alliance. Those are the important things for right now. Step 3, pick a form. Now these are all descriptions of places. Natural landforms, meaning it occurs naturally, don't cost any destiny points, but they also don't provide any rules. Conversely, you could spend 6 destiny points and make it a formidable bastion, meaning it's a very artificial, reinforced thing, which changes the terrain's health to 12 and a 4-up save. If you choose to make it a metalith, it can move and charge because it's a floating thing. So really, this is our first step in articulating what am I looking at on this base. For me personally, I went with the basic natural landform. The place itself isn't the power, it's the power residing in the judgment behind the judge's bench. But this is where you can create a lot of different cool things. Again, each of these, besides the natural landform, cost destiny points. Now number 4 is Origin and Flaws. There are 4 of each. Origins are all passive buffs. Things like if you're within a certain range of this terrain feature, you're harder to shoot. It can give nearby troops better control score. It can buff manifestations. And of course, all these things, like I said, have a destiny points cost. But Flaws actually refund you points at the cost of giving you bad rules. And bad rules in this sense are like, you can't deep strike within 6 inches of this terrain feature. Well, when you consider how big the bases can get, that has different levels of hindrance. You can make nearby rally rolls worse, and so on. And these will essentially refund you destiny points. They give you them back. They're optional, you don't need to take them, but come on. It's fun to be bad at something. Step 5 is choose a curator. Now this part is completely optional, but I adore that they included it. For 4 destiny points, you can make this terrain feature something that a hero can stand on. You essentially get all of the rules that a Ghoul King has with their throne, right? You can step into it, the hero and the terrain are now one item, and you can hop off of it. Now you don't have to have a curator, of course. This could conceptually be something like a Herdstone, right? Where all it does is inspire, no one needs to man it or anything like that. But if you say yes to step 5 and you add a curator, step 6 is the curator upgrades. So this does not apply to you at all if you don't have a curator. If you just built an orb that needs pondering, move right along. But for the rest of us, this is a list of bonuses that whatever the hero on the terrain feature, wherever that is, they get those bonuses. The most basic example is +1 to casting and chanting rolls. It only matters if a wizard or priest is standing there. Another one of these lets you heal the terrain that somebody is manning or standing on, kind of like a branch witch soothing the spirit of a tree formation. My favorite of these is called, it's a reaction called Curator Tunnel. It costs 8 destiny points, so it's quite hefty, but essentially it's in the movement phase. As long as this isn't the turn where the curator got into the terrain, whenever an enemy moves near them, they can immediately hit the eject button out of their F-16 and launch, just place them within 3 inches of anywhere around the terrain. So you can kind of run away. It's quite funny. If your guy's just fully nope, not today. And lastly is a large section just called Other Upgrades. It's a list of 12 upgrades that all have a destiny points cost. And it's a bunch of rules. 3 of them are just giving you different amounts of health. 1 prevents deep striking within 9 inches. Another gives their terrain piece a melee attack or a shooting attack as if it's like shooting magical missiles. And you can add as many of these as you can still afford. So it's the final stop to use up all of your destiny points. So describing mine from the top, I of course went with the Imposing Monument, the smallest one. Filled out my starting war scroll. For my form, I picked Natural Landform, which costs 0 destiny points. For my landmarks, Origins and Flaws. The Origins I put Defensive Bolt Holes because it was originally a tower to be defended. And the effect here is subtract 1 from hit rolls for shooting attacks that target friendly units while they are wholly within 6 inches of this terrain feature, which is pretty rad, a little defensive bonus there. And I did choose a flaw. I went with Dreary Form. Each time a friendly unit wholly within 12 inches of this terrain feature uses the rally command, you must make 3 fewer rally rolls of a d6. I don't use rally a ton. I probably should use it more, but honestly, I'm not worried about it. Now, I did opt for this to have a curator because I wanted a Knight Excelsior to be able to stand in there and be judging everybody. For the curator bonuses or upgrades, I went with Conduit of Power, as I mentioned before. That's +1 to spells and prayers. I have a priest. That's kind of what I go for. And then for any other upgrades, I went for a couple. I have Heavy Buttressing, which is just basically making the save characteristic go to a 4-up. Magical Bolts, which gives it a magical ranged attack. It's crit 2 hits, counts as a companion weapon, 12-inch range, 3 attacks, 4s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend, and d3 damage. And Fortified Parts, add 2 to your landmark of Ghiran's health characteristic. Now I designed this to be a very simple kind of judge's seat that can sit in the backfield. Because there's a hero on it, enemies can't deploy within 9 inches. I was actually going to have a rule called Nebulous that lets you do that, but it's redundant if you have a curator on top of the thing. So I have this big zone, And if anyone tries to jump near it, I do have ranged attacks now that I've added to my hero's profile, and I made it a bit more tanky. It's going to provide a shooting debuff against my opponent to anyone near 6 of me, and it has a little bit of staying power with some upgrades to its health and stuff. Or save as well. So overall, I thought it was a very interesting experiment. I want to start building some more crazy things. I want to get a couple pie plates, right, the 160 mils, and just really have fun building a bunch of different crazy things. This was very simple. It's very very demure, very reined in, very simple because I wanted to articulate this particular thing. But now that I have a bit more time, and once I get the physical copy and it's not a pain to go look up the rules every time, I'm going to go ham. So anyway, massive thank you to Games Workshop for sending me an advanced copy of this book. Like I said, I do have another video talking about the overall value of the book and why I think it's so good. Go check that out. If you're going to be looking for anything to start or as a base or upgrade or bits or anything like that, please consider using one of the affiliate links in my link tree down below. They automatically save you money when you click through that link, and they throw a tip in my tip jar. I also have some links to some tools that I got off other websites to help me build this. If you're curious as to what I'm using and you want to do it yourself, everything I use in this project is in the description down below. Let me know what kind of terrain you're excited to make with this, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.